Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, July 7th, 2020 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And let me remind commissioners, please make sure your microphone is lighted green and speak into the mic for the record. We'll call roll. Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Ackland.
Present.
Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Peterman.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Commissioner Manser.
Present.
And Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum. We have pardon me for a minute. I'm out of order. Yep. We'll work from the screen. We have no personal appearances this evening. One item under consent agenda, which is approval of minutes from our June 16th, 2020 meeting. And you should have a corrected copy in front of you. Unless there's any discussion, I would entertain a motion either to approve consent agenda or to accept the minutes of our June 16th, 2020 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Peterman to accept consent agenda. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions.
I do.
All right. Moving along, we have nothing this evening under unfinished business. And our case under new business this evening is the annual review of the Unified Development Code. And Ms. Jardot or Mr. Carteret, as you prefer, if you'd like to present that case to us, we're ready.
So tonight we are doing the annual review of the UDC. So every year we just kind of look through it, go over things that either need to be changed or corrected or that need to be added in. So in front of you is a list of the different things that are changing. The highlighted text shows what is the proposed new text, and then any text that's been deleted has a line through it, is crossed out. And then there's kind of a note at the bottom of each one that explains the reasoning behind either the change, deletion, or addition of information.
That was short.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know. Okay, so we can start with the first one, which is to go through where everywhere in the code where it says Community Development Director, it to be changed to Development Services Director. The title was changed in November of 2018, so this just coincides with that change to make everything consistent. That's actually the first two items. So the next item is something that we discussed back in January or February regarding commissioner duties and the attendance at those meetings. So this then follows what we discussed, that any more than 25% of regularly scheduled meetings missed or 3 unexcused absences would allow that commission member to, the mayor to then, with the city council approval, remove that person from duty. They do still need city council approval, though. The next section is if the BZA, or sorry, the Board of Adjustment makes a variance, if they also have the power to revoke the variance. It allows for, if conditions aren't being met or the conditions aren't complied with, they can then revoke the variance to make sure that all the conditions are met and things are done as they were stated in the meeting. The next one is subdivision design and layout. So we are removing all of the language regarding street design and technical standards and asking instead that they be designed in accordance with the latest edition of the Kansas City Metropolitan APWA specifications. So it's just kind of unifying what other counties in the area are doing. It's not getting rid of the standards, it's just making them more uniform with what's in the area. When those are updated, we then don't need to do any kind of code amendment. We're following the latest edition.
Are those available on City of Raymore's website?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, I didn't check. Thank you.
Next is fences, so number 6. So we found that there was a little bit of it was just a little bit confusing. The first one is that rural estates can also have the same standards as the agricultural district, but then, sorry, I got ahead of myself. That rural estates can have the same as the agricultural districts, rather than the smaller subdivision lots. The next one is the final plat. When people are submitting those, we only need 1 copy to be recorded. If they want other copies for themselves, they're welcome to bring them, but we only need 1 as opposed to 3 official copies. Next is temporary signs. This just allows tenants as well as those that own the space to put up a sign. Before it was just real estate and those that own the property. This allows the tenant who is leasing it to also put up a temporary sign. Next is accessory uses and structures. This kind of clarifies that a pool must be 5 feet from the property line. It was a little bit confusing in a different area. So this just clarifies that they all must be 5 feet, which aligns with a table that was in section 4.10, or sorry, yeah, 410.
So on that, as far as we know, this is not actually changing the requirement, it's clarifying it, but we shouldn't actually be making any current installations non-compliant with this change, is that correct?
Correct, and we haven't allowed them 5 feet, more closer than 5 feet from the setback from the property line. So this is just continuing and making it even more clear. Besides what was written in the table, it's also now written sort of in long form. The next section is back to signs. So incidental signs, it kind of came about that menu board signs are defined as incidental signs, and in that way are only allowed to be 16 square feet in area and 8 feet in height. Menu boards in general are typically larger than that. 16 square feet is pretty small for a menu board. So this updates those to specifically call out drive-through menu boards and allows them to be up to 42 square feet. It still maintains the 8 feet tall, but in looking at what else was around Raymore, 42 square feet was the maximum size that we currently had. So this goes to further outline what we already have in practice. It also updates, some places are going to electronic displays instead of, I don't know if they're paper now or something that kind of is on a belt system. So this allows them to change that up to 3 times, even if it's electronic, so that if it's electronic, it doesn't become some kind of like add or anything like that, that they can change it 3 times to account for, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But any more than that, and it might come across as being more of an ad. The next section is trash and recycling screening. So this is outlining that they need to match the material that is being used on the main building, that the bottom 3 feet need to be brick, stone, or some other similar material, just so it's a more sturdy and doesn't get worn as quickly. The Planning Commission can allow landscaping to substitute if they see fit. And then if a commercial area, so one example is the Panda Express, and then the person next to them, they share a dumpster. So going forward, we would just require that they have a recorded easement to show that that is shared. That way, if ownership changes, right now it's owned by the same people, but if ownership were to change, that agreement is still in place to allow them to both use the one trash receptacle. So kind of like a driveway easement or use agreement. Next is single-family, attached, and multifamily buildings. This really applies to multifamily housing and outlines design standards in regards to that multifamily housing, so that there are not large sort of blank walls, that there's some, bump outs, and that there's some design standards to go with it. It also states that if they are within 100 feet of a lesser zoned use, so if they are within 100 feet of, say, single-family residential, that they then can only be 125% of the height of that single-family resident, so that it's not a sort of large wall next to the single-family. So this was sort of to help help with those that have sort of that it can be kind of overwhelming to have something so big next to you. This hopefully helps with some of that residents have shared concerns about. It also outlines some prohibited materials and hopes to help maintain some of the residential character.
I have a quick question about the prohibited materials. The paragraph G, number A, plywood sheet siding, and I realize we don't have city engineering represented this evening. So what I was wondering, and this is my experience going back several decades, but one of the favored siding materials back then was called T111. It's basically a plywood siding, and T111 was expensive, and what was taking its place was a masonite type grooved, every 8 inches or whatever. And Masonite and Abitibi brand was a competitor, and that was subject to a class action lawsuit because basically it didn't hold up. It was pre-primed. Over a period of time, the surface would crack. I think it was, I'm trying to remember, there's a newer brand now of pressed wood siding that's, name escapes me, but it seems to have solved those problems that the Masonite type siding had. But at any rate, to me, the T111 was plywood and was actually a superior product. So I'm kind of wondering, when I see plywood sheet siding here, I'm picturing just a 4x8 sheet of plain, not grooved, not wood look, but smart side. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. And that's a wood product technically. Yeah. Well, yeah.
It is a wood panel siding, so, and that's, in my neighborhood, 99% of the houses are built out of that. And so I don't know if there needs to be any clarification about that, because I was worried about that too. So I assume you mean just regular old-fashioned plain plywood versus this, grooved, primed wood look.
Yeah, we can add more detail. I was thinking more the sheets, but I'm more familiar with hardy board, and so I
Right.
will add that in.
Mr. Zur, have you seen similar on any other cities that you represent?
No, I think that it'd be appropriate for us to go back in and be more detailed with regard to what plywood sheeting is, and we'll base that upon the comments this evening.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I thought I understood the intent, but I'm glad Commissioner Wiggins also brought that up. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Mr. Joe. Continue.
No problem. So next is building materials, and this is similar to the trash and recycling screening, that the bottom 3 feet instead of EVIS or wood need to be brick, stone, or similar material, just to allow it to be a little bit better maintained and it stands up a little bit better. This is just for the front of the facade.
Real quick,
Yeah, Commissioner Arkia.
sorry to backtrack a little bit, but on the same section that the Commissioner Wiggins and Faulkner mentioned, but on number H, roof-mounted equipment, we talk about satellite dishes and such needing to be screened. Does that include solar panels, things of that nature that are also roof-mounted?
It doesn't include solar panels. Those can only be, I'd have to double check in the code, but I believe they can only be up to 3 feet off the roof, or 24 inches off the roof, so they don't stick out as much as the roof-mounted equipment can.
And then when you say screened, like if I had a satellite dish on my roof, it has to be screened, but if it's like on a deck or in the ground, does it need to be screened as well?
No, just if it's on the roof.
Okay. Sorry,
Yep.
thanks.
Sorry,
Since
Commissioner
Commissioner,
Wiggins.
thank you. Since Commissioner Urquia brought that up, and that's, this pertains to future installations. So the people that have a satellite dish that's in existence, that's, on the, kind of on the side of the garage roof that, is a big old 3-foot dish, that they're grandfathered essentially, or are we going to be going out and enforcing, roof mounting equipment that's been installed for 10 or 15 years?
No, they would be grandfathered in if they made any substantial changes to it, so change the positioning of it, or I think it's if they do over 50% worth of the cost of it, then they would need to comply with code. But if they left it as is and just did routine maintenance, it would be able to be stayed as it is.
Thank you.
And I would note also, this paragraph is specifically directed at single-family attached and multifamily, but, the obvious, to me, just because I pass it fairly frequently, the obvious multifamily, or, excuse me, wrong word, single-family attached would be Foxwood Springs. And if I remember right, those are actually sloped roofs, not flat. And I'm trying to picture, it seems like on a retrofit, it would be a little more complicated to try to go in and add a parapet or something to screen where you already have existing single-family attached, if that's the right. Those are typically fourplex, if I remember right. Comments?
Yes, and they wouldn't need to. It would be grandfathered in if they had them existing. Or maybe I don't understand your question.
Well, what I thought I heard, and maybe I misheard, was grandfathered unless it was subject to being replaced or something like that. And in the world of cable television, satellite dishes, whatever, I would guess that there are a fair number of people who change providers reasonably often. So I was wondering about that specifically because of the fact that, people jump from one provider to another. All right.
That's not something I had thought of, so we can take a look at that and get back to you next time.
And then just to clarify, this is only on the roof, so if they mount it to the wall right by the roof, then it doesn't
Correct.
fall under that?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, yeah, I do know specifically that there are a fair number, I certainly haven't tried to count them, but there's a fair number of single-family detached houses, and it seems like the corner of the roof is a favorite place to mount that dish. And, you know, the dishes are nothing like the old days where they were, 8 feet diameter? So it's a different world out there. Okay. Any other comments on that? No? Okay. Ms. Jardot, we'll let you have it back.
Okay, one of the last ones is just adding the definition of EFIS, which is exterior finish, installation and finish systems, and that we consider it a masonry material as opposed to like wood or a plaster type material. The last item is then a topic for discussion, the parkland dedication requirement. The current standard is a ratio of 20 acres per 1,000 people, and it was first adopted in 2004. Several developers have stated that they felt this was much higher than other communities, so we would like to do further research to allow for more discussion.
That certainly seems reasonable to me. One thing, which I don't intend to jump ahead here, but parkland dedication, or there's fee in lieu, which I assume as we're looking at this, we would look at potential reduction in the amount of parkland, but would that also carry over into a potential reduction of fee in lieu? Or do we know yet?
It would carry over because fee in lieu is based specifically on the amount of parkland that's dedicated.
Right,
And the
okay.
price the developer pays for the ground, so they're intricately connected. So by adjusting the parkland dedication requirement, we're automatically adjusting the fee in lieu requirement.
Okay. Well, certainly seems reasonable to me to look into that further. Do any of the other commissioners have comments on that, or Mr. Mayor?
No.
No? Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, one comment on that last topic of parkland dedication. Clearly, we'll have the Parks and Recreation staff involved in that research, and we will absolutely go through the park board with that discussion as well. It was just something we included in here because there'll be quite a bit of research and work done on that. So that was just something that may not be, if you authorized a UDC amendment, I don't think it'll be included in that amendment based
Right.
upon the other changes we may look at tonight, but it would be a future discussion item. But I wanted to be sure to state that Park Board will definitely be involved in that discussion.
Yeah, well, that certainly seems reasonable to me. So basically, and I'm addressing the other commissioners and the mayor here on this topic this evening. So we have before us proposals, which, Mr. Zur, I assume that if we were not in favor of one or more of those proposals, we could actually kick those out, or I'll open the floor for further discussion by the commission if there are any other topics that commission would like to add or add for future study, like the parkland. Does that seem reasonable?
That's absolutely correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, floor is open for discussion by the commission. Doesn't look like it's going to be a heated discussion. That's good.
Well, I would like to ask, so Katie, do you have a couple of items that have been brought up here from the dais tonight that are going to be, that you would suggest to be pulled for further consideration, or at least a little more clarification from the planning department?
We're looking for if direction on if they would like us to propose these as amendments, except for the parkland dedication, if they would like us to look into that further. So kind of two separate.
Well, there was another item in there that the commissioners were talking about that you said you were going to get further clarification on. So, Jonathan, did you have something?
So I think what you're speaking of there, Your Honor, is the notion of the change for the plywood sheeting and the additional details that would be drafted into that,
Right.
and then the roof-mounted equipment, whether or not there needed to be some additional clarification there. I think staff has written down, at least I have, a number of the notations made throughout the course of the discussion this evening, and will confer with planning staff on the proposed changes. I think if the commission were to direct staff this evening to proceed with the drafting of a proposed amendment, that proposed amendment would incorporate language in order to address the comments from the commission this evening.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, so Mr. Zer, just kind of following up there, so what I think I'm hearing is commission would see the proposed change to the UDC as another case at a future meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, you're going to see in a proposed amendment that'll come forward. So the notion this evening
Right.
would be, I mean, if there was going to be a motion this evening to instruct staff to proceed forward, the motion would likely be instructing staff to proceed forward with the identified changes and suggested alterations in the UDC as shown this evening, taking into account the suggested alterations or changes that have been discussed by members of the commission.
Right.
And
Mayor
then
Turnbow, that
authorizing
sound-
us to proceed forward with the parkland dedication if you're inclined to do so.
Right. Does that sound right to you, Mayor Turnbow?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thought so. Just checking. All right. Further discussion? Always worries me when city attorney smiles. That's good. We're glad you're here.
So I'll go ahead and take a stab at a motion.
Uh-huh.
It'll be a stab. But I'll go ahead and make a motion for us to, would it be approve or adopt?
I would suggest that you're instructing and authorizing staff to proceed forward with the preparation of the necessary, what is it, the 29th or 30th amendment? I think you're on the 32nd amendment, drafting of the 32nd amendment to the UDC, adopting the items identified this evening.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion then for the staff to proceed with the preparation of a draft of the 32nd Amendment outlining the discussed changes this evening.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Wiggins, directing staff to prepare a 32nd amendment to the UDC, incorporating comments discussed this evening. Is that close, Mr. Zer? Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you. All right, we'll see that again. Okay. Moving to the next item on our agenda, Mr. Zer, City Council report.
Thank you, Chairman Faulkner. I'm happy to be able to provide the City Council report from the City Council meeting on June 22nd. As always, I invite Mr. Cataret as well as Mayor Turnbow to insert any additional information that I might happen to overlook or other important items. I would note, going back to the UDC annual review, I think staff will likely be looking at the parkland dedication anyway. We didn't include that necessarily in the terms of the motion, but I think it's a research area that staff will likely be taking up anyway. Under the June 22nd City Council meeting, City Council had the opportunity to look at 5 different items, each of which had come before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Happy to be able to report on those. One is the Foxwood Springs rezoning. There was a public hearing held on that item. It was previously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 16th by a vote of 8 to 1. It was approved by the City Council at its first reading by unanimous vote. The second item was the original town Block 8 alley vacation. This, we recall, would be the alley vacation that runs through the middle of TB Hanna Park so that we can avoid having individuals drive through the center of it after we've done all of these nice improvements to it. There was a public hearing that was held on the matter. Mr. Cataret provided the staff report on that. You'd previously recalled the commission approved this by unanimous vote on June 16th. The city council followed suit by approving it unanimously as well. That was also a first reading for that particular item. The next item on the agenda for the 22nd was the East Brook at Creekmore first final plat. This was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission again on the 16th of June, approved unanimously at that time. Mr. Cataret provided the staff report. This involves the 34-lot single-family development located on the west side of North Madison Street, south of the Creekmore Maintenance Building. Staff presented the information to the council. Council voted unanimously to approve the East Brook at Creekmore first final plat. Next item on the agenda for consideration was the Brookside 10th plat of tracks X and Y. Mr. Cataret again presented staff report on this item. You'd recall that Planning and Zoning Commission approved this by a vote of 9-0 unanimously on June 16th. Again, following suit, City Council approved it on a unanimous basis as well. The only item I've got, remaining item, is the governing body members on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mayor Turnbow has indicated his desire and willingness to continue serving. Always welcome to have his input on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And finally, at the City Council meeting, the council selected the Mayor Pro Tem for the coming year and identified Councilman Townsend to serve in that capacity. That's all I have from the City Council meeting. If I've missed anything, I don't know how I could, because I think that's everything that was on the agenda, to be honest with you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yep. Anything to add, Mayor Turnbow?
I have nothing, no.
Must have done good, Jonathan. Okay, that'll take us ahead to next item on our agenda, staff report. Ms. Jardot, Mr. Cataret.
Thank you, sir. The monthly staff report for June is in your packet. It shows that Compass Health has started with their concrete floors and are going vertical with their steel building frame. Schlotsky's has opened, and site work is continuing with TB Hanna. The code enforcement and building permits are also in your packet. I would ask that the council cancel we don't have any applications for the July 21st meeting. So if we could cancel that meeting. We will, however, have public hearings at both August meetings, the 4th and 18th. And then I'm available for any additional questions.
Mm-hmm. I did have one. Give me a second to catch up here. Somewhere in the staff report there I thought that I saw some blanks.
Yeah, I think we may be on the same page. The current homes under construction and the total, you have 2018, 2019, and then 2020 is blank.
Yeah. So it's not urgent to me. Commissioner Kia may think it's urgent, but
I want to know now.
well, I think we're definitely interested in the growth of the city and seeing those numbers. So didn't know that you'd have them at your fingertips this evening, but
We have them done. I didn't bring a copy, so.
would it be reasonable to email that out?
We will do that. Since
aside-
commissioners are dying to know those numbers, we will get it to them.
Well, and is everyone on the commission comfortable with canceling that July 21st meeting for lack of business, and then we'll make up for it in August? Okay, we agree. Thank you. Okay. Any comments on behalf of City Engineering Department?
Really, the only comment, you'll note that Westgate Drive construction is very active. This is the relocation of Kentucky Road project, very active out there with stormwater installation being done. The roadway will have curbs and be paved, hopefully to be completed, I believe, in the September timeframe. So moving along very quickly, we're excited to finally see that. That's the last project that was approved by the voters back in our last GO bond initiative that we had. So we're excited to finish up that last project.
Thank you.
One other note, Prairie View of the Good Ranch subdivision, a subdivision this commission approved back in 2007, and it just went in hiatus. They never, even though they got approval for it, they never did any construction. The first phase of that, there's going to be 2 phases. It's nearing completion. They've got all the roads paved and are going to be coming forward for acceptance of those improvements and start building permits here probably within the next month. So we're excited to see that. I believe it's 35 lots, give or take, that'll be in that first phase. It's right off of Hubach Hill Road, south of Stonegate. So it's a nice addition to the Good Ranch. They haven't had the single-family lots of that size since Stonegate was finished out. So it's good to see a different lot size, different product become available in Raymore. So glad to see. We need lots. A lot inventory is definitely down. I've been talking about that. So it's good to see lots coming on board.
And that won't come back through Planning and Zoning Commission at this
Nope.
time?
It's been platted and completed from the Planning Commission standpoint, yes.
So I think we're very glad to get that news because we might not hear that otherwise.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Real quick on engineering, do you know when the resurfacing of Sunset, because they did the curbs, and now I'm assuming they're going to resurface it? Do you know when that's going to take place?
I don't know that. Well, we'll find out and let you know.
Okay. So that concludes staff report. At this time, I'll open the floor for public comment. If you would like to speak to the commission, please come forward to the podium, give us your name and address for the record. And seeing no one, I will open the floor for commission member comment. All right, let's see. Commissioner Wiggins.
No additional comments. Thanks, staff, as always, for your help.
Yeah. Commissioner Peterman.
Yeah, I don't have anything either, just thanks to the staff for all the hard work.
Commissioner Mansur.
Nothing additional. Thank you, staff.
All right, well, on my right side's pretty quiet this evening. Commissioner Fizer, Vice Chair Fizer.
Well, I'm just going to repeat everything that's been said. I don't really have any comments, but thank the staff for all their work.
Yeah. Commissioner Ackland.
I don't have any comments either, but I do want to thank you as well.
All right, Commissioner Urquia.
Yeah, thank you all for your hard work. Almost perfect tonight, except for those 3 blanks. But appreciate all you do.
Mayor Turnbow.
So our next meeting will actually be the evening of Election Day. Prior to that, please learn about the general obligation bond issues that are coming up. It's a no tax increase, $23 million bond issue. We do have the information on our website at raymore.com, so if you get a chance to read through that. But it basically is $17,575,000 for streets. That includes Johnston Drive Extension, Ward Road Sunset, Ward Road, Sunset Lane and 163rd, Kurzwell Road, and a portion of that will be dedicated toward the partnership for the widening of North Cass Parkway, or widening down to North Cass Parkway of I-49. That is a multi-jurisdictional group effort from the county, Belton. I think even Grandview may be looking at participating and assisting, but they, I think they threw a letter in to support that effort, and of course the Missouri Department of Transportation. A lot of great things going on there. You will get something in the mail very soon from the city. It's the same brochure that is on our website, and then another $5.9 million for parks, which is Centerview Phase 2. They'll be finishing out some things back behind here. They'll be covering the water retention with the underground water retention and surfacing that portion of the circle and creating a plaza area. for the city hall. The rack expansion, basically doubling in size because it's had so much favorable usage. And West Hawk Ridge Park improvements and some more amenity improvements down at our amphitheater. So there are a lot of things that our general obligation bond, if passed, would be able to do over the next 3 years. Some pretty exciting improvements, and I hope you'll have an opportunity to kind of read up on it, study it, hopefully promote it. City staff can't promote it, but I can as an elected official. I hope folks will get out and vote yes on this. There's some great things that we're going to be able to accomplish with that. And that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Turnbow. I'm going to be about as quiet as the rest of the commissioners this evening. Thank you to staff. And Mr. Carteret, thank you for adding comments on behalf of city engineering. I appreciate that. Unless any of the commissioners or the mayor have anything else this evening, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Did I hear a second? Okay. So a motion by Mayor Turnbow, second by Commissioner Ackland to adjourn this evening's meeting. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 5, 6, and I have 8 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you all.
Never heard from him. I asked ahead of time.